Oh, we didn't have a countdown this time. I forgot to turn it on. We're live.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? Today, Holly and I wanted to do something fun. And sorry, we're running a little bit late. I know I said we were going to be on in about 15 minutes, but we were having some technical difficulties. So today we're talking about Princess Diana's profile, and I just have to give a little backstory on this because I have been watching The Crown, and Diana came on the scene this season, and I was watching her, and this was right around the time I was really diving big time into human design, and I was watching her whole life play out. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to know what her profile is. I'm dying to know more about her. So I pulled her profile. Are you guys ready for this? Should we show it,
Yes.
Holly? Diana is an emotional projector. 1-3. She's a third line. Oh my gosh, so cool.
So, do you want to kind of run through going over her chart as if she's a client, and we can kind of just help people see what can you expect from like a foundational HG session,
Yeah.
and we'll kind of share some fun stuff that we see.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So I usually start out by just talking about the person's type and strategy. So Diana's a projector, and she's got an emotional authority. So she has that defined solar plexus there on the. Does my mouse show up when I point, Holly? Can you see it?
No,
No. Okay.
not for me.
Okay. Does it show up here?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So on the right here, she has a defined emotional solar plexus. And what makes her a projector is she does not have a motor to the throat, right? No. Yes,
Yes.
she doesn't. Yes.
And
Sorry.
she doesn't have a defined sacral.
Yes, and she does not have a defined sacral, which is this right here. So, and she also has an undefined throat as well, but she has a defined head and ajna, defined will center, and a defined root and solar plexus. So this is what makes her an emotional projector. So her strategy is going to be to wait for recognition and to be invited. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Holly, since you're going to be doing the projector video soon?
Yeah, so some of the languaging on the different sites that people will see is wait for the invitation. And that gets a little confusing just because it's like not everything comes as an official little, like, here's an envelope. We're inviting you to come into our lives. And but like you said, the verbiage around recognition is really where it's at with that. So what this is if we look at the actual structure and the mechanics of the chart, she's a projector, like Holly said, because there's no motor to the throat, it's not defined, and she doesn't have the sacral. So the mechanics around not having a defined or motorized throat is it's not that consistent, sustainable energy to the throat. And energetically, it's so I have a projector daughter, and she will struggle to be heard sometimes. And so I recognize that when she gets louder, she's really needing that recognition. And so the family knows, look at her in her eyes, let her know that she's been heard. So for Diana or other projectors, the trick here is wait. If it includes you having to share your gifts, your talents, your strengths, your wisdom, you need to wait for the other person or the group of people to have this moment where they see you as a projector and go, wow, she really has something to share here. She has some wisdom. Let's listen to her. And so it's that recognition. And this is part of that. Did you want to go into decision-making processes, or like how do you
Sure.
go there?
Yeah. The one thought that was kind of coming to me when you were talking about that was when a projector has that like recognition, it's kind of like turning on like what I call like a beacon or like a magnetic kind of like pull. And when it, or you've described it as like flipping a switch or something. And then when they get that recognition, what it does is they get that experience of what recognition does for them. And they start just like being really attractive to other people once they're able to have that experience.
Yeah, and I think that what it also does, so the way that I explain this, because a lot of people I know, sometimes they hear that they're a projector and it feels awful.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at it with a really restrictive way of processing it, it's like, okay, so I'm just waiting for other people all of my
Mm-hmm.
life. So the gift here is I liken it to waiting and allowing the universe to filter out people who are not going to listen to you and letting the universe do it for you. So the people who are your people are going to recognize your talents. They're going to see the wisdom that you have, and they're going to see that you have gifts, and they're going to want to listen to you. Um, this can unfortunately be really challenging if you come into a situation where your gifts and talents aren't recognized. And do you want to kind of dive into what you saw with Princess Diana and this kind of dynamic?
Yeah, so if you've watched The Crown at all, you've seen this and you know, but one really interesting thing that I found in her chart was that, she suffered from bulimia, and I just thought it was really fascinating that she has an undefined throat. And so the symbolism was not like lost on me that she's not being recognized, she's not being able to share what she has to offer and say what she wants to say. And so the only way when she feels unrecognized, what does she do? She goes into bulimia, and it's literally coming out through her throwing up because she feels like she can't get it out any other way. At least that was the symbolism I kind of saw in it. And I thought that was really fascinating to watch. She also, I think I'm getting off track here, but she also has an undefined G center, so she doesn't really have that like fixed identity, and so she's going to be kind of feeling out who she is through other people. And so because she's around a royal family who literally doesn't recognize her, doesn't let her like offer things, doesn't invite her in, she is just, I can imagine how torturous that must have been for her. And then she has, you know, all these people who are just kind of like obsessed with her, and she's getting many, many, many offers, but a lot of these offers aren't gonna, and you and I kind of discussed this ahead of time, Holly. We talked about how for a projector, they can get many offers, but that doesn't necessarily mean all those offers are recognizing what they specifically have to offer. And the really fascinating thing that was kind of depicted in the TV show is how she would always ask for something to do. She would ask for a job. She would ask for ways in which she could offer things and be involved and share her wisdom. And she was rejected over and over again by the queen, and specifically very much so by her husband. He would actually often get really jealous when she would be recognized by people because he felt like he was not recognized as well. Now, he's not a projector, but when she would get recognition and when she would get the things that she needed, he would get like fly into a rage, and he'd get really jealous, and he pretty much like hated her for it. And so at least that's the way it was depicted in what I could view from it. And so she's getting her, in a sense, like her identity sometimes from people outside of her. Nobody's recognizing her. The man that she's supposed to like, be married to and in love with, like, hates her. And so it's just, I don't know. That was really fascinating for me. Do you have anything you want to jump in there and add?
Not specific to that.
Mm-hmm.
It was that question of, as a projector, you would think that there would be a lot of recognition there because she was a
Mm-hmm.
princess.
Mm-hmm.
But what are the quality of those invitations? What's the quality of the recognition there? So kind of bouncing back to the structure of
Yes. Yeah, sorry.
sessions. So, and we
Off
actually,
track.
we'll have to do another video on that or something, because so we're kind of streamlining our processes, and between Holly and I, we're going to make sure that we have a similar experience for people. And so we talk about that type and strategy. We talk about that emotional authority, which actually, do you want to talk about
Yes.
emotional wave?
Yes, so she has the exact same emotional wave I do, which is this in this channel right here, this 30 to 41, which is a collective abstract, and then she also has this gate 39, which is going to show up as an individual wave. And so we can talk just really quickly about those. The collective abstract wave, I'll just read this to you really quick, it's kind of like peaks and valleys. And it looks a little bit like, well, let's see, I'll just read this to you. So the abstract wave operates through desire and feeling, and it moves from peaks to valleys, and it's based on expectation. And so when you have an expectation about something, you're excited about it. So I can imagine what it was like for her, like going into believing that being a princess, she was going to be able to like offer the things she had and you know, help other people, because we know she was very into like wanting to help. And so she had this expectation of what it was going to look like for her, and then that hope is dashed. And so she's experiencing these big highs and lows of emotion, and she's constantly, you know, she's getting that recognition from people outside of her, and they're telling her she's wonderful and amazing. And then like in her family structure, it's like she's getting the exact opposite. And so I can imagine like the wave of emotion she would experience just in those expectations alone. I just can't even imagine like the amount of pressure that she felt, as far as like, the interesting thing is she has a defined head and root, so she's not gonna experience it the same as others, but it's going to be her own expectation for what she's going to experience. And so I think that she thought it was going to be one thing, and it was the complete opposite. And that was really depressing for her. I can imagine there was a lot of lows. And then she also has that individual wave, which is a little bit more low key. It kind of operates in like shorter blips. But just to give you a description of what that one kind of looks like, is it operates through the expression of moodiness, emotions, melancholy, or passion. And it moves along on an even keel, shorter up and down spikes. And it's about like relationships. It really is about like, you know, you're affected by your relationships with other people, and that kind of that depicts what your emotional wave is going to look like. And so she is a projector having to wait for recognition, but she also has to do that dance with her emotion, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she's, so we see that emotional solar plexus, so that influences her decision-making process. And then we see that defined will or ego or heart center. All three of those verbiages, those words people use for that center, it can be a little bit confusing. So she's got she's got the root center, that's the other motor. She doesn't have the sacral, so she's going to have to be careful to not overextend herself, knowing when to rest, knowing what to put her energy into. So can I dive into the centers a little bit?
Yeah.
So the centers are centers of awareness, and then two of them are centers that have pressure in them. It's where we get energy, like, not that we get energy from the outside world in it, it's a pressure center. So stuff comes in from the head and it comes in from the root. If it comes in from the root, it then kind of goes up the chart, and so that's a pressure center. I found it fascinating that she didn't have either of these centers open. And then we have the 4 energy centers there. So they're all centers of awareness, and then those are motors. Where we have openness is where we, it's not that we don't have it, it's that we don't always have it. So where we have colors defined in our chart, centers or gates, that's who we are consistently. And then in the white areas, it's where we take in information from the outside world a little bit more. So like her throat center, the diamond in the middle is her identity center, and then the sacral is that life force, workforce, energy, and creation center, what she does. And then the spleen is where it's like time, intuition. What was the other one for that center?
Fears and health.
Fears.
Yeah. Your immune system, yeah.
So that identity center, when it's open, so she's, as a projector, she's going to have a gift of being able to kind of like see other people, what's going on, see where things can be improved. And then with the open identity center, she's going to take in that energy from another person and have probably a gift of being able to sense them. So that's kind of how that white space is there's potential for wisdom here. And so like in the spleen, she she may be able to sense in other people different things when their spleen comes into their space. I don't know if you have anything that you want to
I
open
do
with.
actually. What's kind of coming to me is a story about when she went to the United States on her own, kind of towards the end of her marriage. She went to a hospital where there was a bunch of HIV patients, and she was having discussion with like the nurses and the people there, and they were telling her about how these people are often rejected by their families and other people because, and this was like at the very beginning of the understanding of how HIV worked, um and and so the nurse was kind of like telling her, well, they're rejected and nobody wants to touch them. And so Diana sits down on the bed and literally hugs this child who has HIV, and it was this really big moment because, and the media was all over it. And in that moment I could see how like she could feel what that child felt. She could relate, like nobody wants to touch me, nobody wants to give me recognition. Like, I mean, I could see how she would very much relate, like through her own experience, but also through her identity center of feeling what that person felt and kind of identifying with what they were experiencing. And so she did, and then I could see how like she has this open spleen and her intuition is just very open. And so I think she's taking in information there, and I could see how she would know like what needs to happen, what she could do, and what she had to offer by just like using her celebrity or her influence to show people that HIV was not a scary thing, and to hug this child and touch them, and the impact that she had just by doing that. I think she very intuitively just knew that. She knew what
Yeah.
she could offer there. And then she goes home and she gets berated for it, and she gets in trouble from the queen and like her husband, and they're all mad and angry at her, and they're calling her stupid for doing something like that, and they couldn't imagine why she would even like do that, you know. And so it's just a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's so um so and just a distinction here that for those who don't know, we'll just run through the centers really quick. So we'll start at the root. That is like where adrenal energy is. The solar plexus to the right is where emotions are. The will center is really where will is. Where what else do you want to share about that? I know you have it. You have an opener defined in yours.
I have an open will
You have it
center,
open.
and you do too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So an undefined the interesting thing about a will center, and this is kind of like how I learned it, but like someone who has an open will center, they can often feel like the need to like prove themselves, and when they get in the presence of someone who has a defined will center, it can get even worse. So I could see how this could play out for Diana also, like with the queen and her husband. You know, I can't remember if either of them had a defined will center. I actually did pull their profiles at one point, but what could happen is like Diana knows who she is and what she's like here to do, and she is essentially is here to prove herself, so to speak. And she can do that, but then she could get in the presence of like her husband, who I think did have an undefined will center, and he could tend to want to like exercise his will over her, which I find very interesting. And I could
So
see how
the
that would
dynamic.
create. Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's okay.
The
I was just looking
dynamic
it up for.
there. So we're talking about the mechanics of the chart here for just a second. The identity center. So this is where. So she would have had the ability to somewhat become a chameleon, and adapting to the different environments, because those who have a defined G center have a more defined space of knowing, kind of like knowing who they are, what they want, and then that defined will center. It's if he had it open and she had it defined, he could take in that energy in an amplified way
Yeah.
and become more willful, more stubborn. There's always an elevated version of anything in the chart, and there's always a lower expression of anything in the chart, and it's up to the person to decide what it is that they want to express when that energy comes into their space, or if that's who they are all of the time. And so I'll run back through again. The spleen on the left is that time and intuition, and fears. The G center is the identity. So when this is open, people tend to question their lovability.
Yep.
When the will center is open, they question their value or their worth, and they tend to try and prove themselves, like Holly said. When the solar plexus is open, that's what we call a typical emotional empath, because they literally feel the emotions of the other person, typically in an amplified way.
I think it's an interesting thing to talk about what's going on in her head here.
Yeah. So the throat is communication, and where manifestation also comes out in the chart. So with her open throat, I love it actually. So Oprah has an open throat as well. And what happens there is they take in the throat energy of the audience that they're talking to. And so they'll have a way of kind of changing the way that they speak, either their languaging, people who do voice impersonations typically have a configuration where there's an open throat, because they can just kind of morph that, or they take in the voice energy of the audience and speak on behalf of the audience. And then the defined ajna, so that is where beliefs and perceptions are, and the defined head center is the ideas and inspiration. So she would have been a very inspiring person, especially to someone with an open head center, because it would have just amplified this energy. But do you have both of these?
I have the ajna.
So you want to talk about those?
Yeah. So the ajna essentially, the ajna is our beliefs and our belief systems. They kind of live here. And so in a way, her chart is so interesting. She has that open identity center, but she has a defined will center, and she has a defined head and ajna. So in a way, she knows who she is, but like she doesn't. Like her belief systems about who she is are going to be very more structured. She also has the gate 63 to 4 in her head, and I'm trying to remember, is that the gate of questioning?
It's doubt, yeah. And then
gate
the 4 is answers. So we'll talk about the low expression of this and the high expression of this. So in like a low expression, someone with a defined ajna who maybe has the answers could think that they're always right.
Yep.
Someone who understands that they have a structured way of thinking, and they choose to take in information from around them, they have the ability to do that. They'll need someone else with an outside perspective to share something, and they can quickly adjust. They'll have the ability to lock onto ideas and inspiration, and they'll have the ability to so in the ajna, it's more of an ability to lock onto like a perception or a perspective. And this can be super powerful as well, especially
absolutely.
If you're trying to like focus your energy on something or create something. This is really powerful. And then if you didn't have this, well, I don't really want to get into the vast what ifs.
The interesting thing is, I was literally having a conversation with a friend about this last night, and I was telling her, I was like, it's so funny. My husband has a defined head and ajna, and I have an open head and a defined ajna. And I was telling her how I feel like we're so totally different. Like I'm really, really open to new perspectives, and he's like really, really close to new perspectives. And so I was wondering like kind of what that looks like. And then I started to think about how when you have a defined ajna and you're willing and open to take in new perspectives, I feel like that can actually be a really powerful thing, because then you can influence others into showing them what it looks like to have new perspectives. And it can be a little bit more influential in that, like, I don't know, that projection kind of a way.
Yeah, so I think what you're kind of getting at, and the way that I experience it, is when there is colored in energy, it's like there versus a void. And I don't really like the languaging of void, but it's just
fixed is what it
so like we can talk about it in the pressure center type stuff. So if she had a defined root center and someone didn't, by no fault of her own, just because of the way that the energy works, the other person could feel under pressure by her.
This is me and my husband. He has an undefined root.
We have the same. And so, um, and I think this will kind of lead into the incarnation cross, and we can maybe even read that, because
Yeah.
you can see how these different things can add up into a specific energetic dynamic play out, and then you can see how
Her profile.
yeah. Oh yeah. We'll do profile, and then we'll do
Yeah.
incarnation cross, because I think it really just paints a really incredible picture of what potentially she went through.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So why don't you talk about the 1-3,
Okay.
and then we'll do the incarnation cross.
So I just have to say, like, having the profile that she has in the life that she had could potentially be really torturous. Let's just get that out of the way, because so she's for a 1-3. So the first line needs a base and foundation of knowledge, and so they want to investigate. They're the investigator. They want to know all the things, and they want to understand, right? And then she has this 3, which is the experiential learner. And so 3s essentially are here to make mistakes, and really there's no such thing as a mistake for a 3. They don't see it that way. And I've often said this, like, I'm a third line in my unconscious side too, and I always say, like, I don't believe there is such a thing as a mistake. Like, the phrase that I often use is, all these things shall be for thy good. And so I can see how, as a first line, she wants to investigate through experiencing things. And so if you're locked into this box and you're not able to learn through experience, I just can't imagine what that would be like. Like, I can feel what that would feel like. And then also the really interesting thing is she has this gate 48, which do you want to say anything about that, Holly?
Like, they go deep. So it's just amplifying what the 1 does naturally. It's and I joke around as sometimes in the group, and I'm like, do you have a 1 in your profile? Do you have the gate 48? Because they're the ones that have questions. They want to understand it. They want to go deep. They just want the information. And so they're willing to ask those questions. And that could have not gone well. I don't know.
Well, I could see how it would play out. Like, she would try to talk to the queen, and she would try to understand. The queen would always just shut her out and say, like, it's inappropriate. And, like, in The Crown, they kind of depict this really well. Like, she often calls, and she wants, like, in the beginning days, like 2 days before her marriage, she finds out that her husband is, like, still involved with this woman, and she's like, I'm, out, and she, like, calls the queen, and the queen won't take her phone call, and so she doesn't know what to do, and she feels forced into this thing, and, like, how does she even get out of it when nobody will listen to her, and she can't, like, understand what's going on. And I could just see how they put her in this box, and they're like, you can't get out, you can't ask questions, you can't do anything. So she's not able to learn through experience. She's really not even able to investigate, and I can just feel how torturous that must have been for her. Like, it was like she couldn't be herself.
Yeah. Well, and that 3 aspect of, it probably wasn't very safe for her to make mistakes.
That's why they call them the martyrs, because people get upset with them when they do that. And then she's got this gate 30 to 41, which is that it's all about, that's like the channel of desire. And so she probably has this great desire to go out and experience life, and she can't. And the gate 41 is really interesting because that's that gate of fantasy. So she has the ability to see all of the possibilities, and she's not able to experience them. So it's intense.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, do we want me to just read it?
Yeah, let's hear her So just, can we give them an idea of what an incarnation cross, like, is? What it's
Yes.
It's yeah. Go ahead.
It's a little bit, so we'll touch on these things, but the incarnation cross, other things in your chart, they don't matter if you're not following your type and strategy.
Amen.
So don't put the cart before the horse, and don't try to drink from the fire hose. But we're going to tell this to you because it is important. So the conscious sun, so on her, it's the 39.1, which is the gate of provocation. So about like 70% of your chart is
These
is
top four right here.
these top four, but then also the way that Karen, the woman that we both have certified through, she talks about it like all of the energy in the chart is kind of like funneled through that conscious sun energy. And this gate of provocation, she doesn't have to do anything
She's
to
just going to
have
provoke
provoking
people.
energy. She can just exist and walk into a room and potentially going to poke and provoke people, whether she realizes it or not, and whether they like it or not. So the incarnation crosses. So it's the 39, the 38, the 21, and the 48 for her.
So
They're
the conscious sides are in the one line, and the the unconscious are in the third line. So.
And we could like take it another level of going that deep, but the name, so you can see it on here, hers is the RAX tension 2. I'm like pointing as if you guys can see where what
It's
like,
right
there
here.
you go.
Right angle cross of tension 2. Yep.
Yeah, so sometimes these names make sense, sometimes they don't, sometimes
hers actually makes a little bit of sense.
It does. And then sometimes just throw it out the window and just look at the gates and see what story you can put together.
Well, the interesting thing is
So,
two of the same people can have the same incarnation cross, and they can show up totally different because there's so many other things that play into it. And so when you're studying your incarnation cross, it's important to just study the gates individually, maybe at first, and see what they mean for you in your life and how they apply to you. There's so much information there. And like Collie said, you really can't put the cart before the horse. You need, if you want to be able to play out your incarnation cross, you have to master doing your strategy and authority. You won't get there if you don't do that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I'm like, I could go super deep, but I won't. I'll just read this to you. So, should I give other celebrities that she has this with?
Yes. Ooh, that's a good idea.
So she shares this incarnation cross with Tom Cruise, Lindsay Lohan. I don't know how to say her name. Is it Malia Obama? Malia?
Oh, yeah, Malia. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Dalai Lama as well.
Funny. Of course.
No pressure. So we're just going to read this as if we're talking to Diana. So your purpose is to provide tension so that life around you stays in tune. Just as strings of a musical instrument cannot create the right sound if they are not kept at the right tension, neither can the essential things in life grow and be maintained without necessary controls. Whether or not anyone agrees with you, you recognize where others are out of tune with their lives because of their conditioning. And it is natural for you to confront and even provoke them to change their ways. So already you can see this energy is probably not going to go well in an institution like royalty.
Nope.
Especially the female that's a projector and needs to be
and the queen, like she's the dynamic.
Yeah. So you constantly challenge people in ways that make them uncomfortable because you touch on areas of their lives in which they lack clarity. It is important that you hold no personal grudges or judgments, otherwise you can easily lose the love and support of those you cherish. You have a tendency towards, which you may have to touch on that because you said that she was liked before they got married, but then maybe over time, so just take a mental note of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is, you have a tendency towards melancholy. We've heard melancholy 3 times in her chart. Mm-hmm. And so we may have to touch on that too. When you recognize and honor this, it can be a gate to exploring your inner depths. Deep within you can be found levels of creativity that, when consciously expressed, can alleviate the potential depression that comes with melancholy. Deliberately allowing your creative juices to flow directs you towards the things that you love and can bring you a profound sense of achievement and fulfillment. Meditation, massage, physical exercise can relieve feeling too wound up, but consciously releasing any sense of always needing to be right and in control will soothe you best. If you can be content with controlling those aspects of your life that are within your grasp, like where you live, what you eat, how you behave, what you wear, and what you do, as well as your ongoing attitude towards life, this will help you find your internal balance with the constraints of the world, which, interesting, controlling what you eat. If you struggled with bulimia, that is a form of control.
Well, and what she wears, like they would literally control what she weared. I mean, there was an interesting time where she wanted to, they depict in The Crown where she wants to wear this, or I think I watched it in another thing where she wanted to wear this dress that was a little bit revealing, and they gave her like a really, really hard time about it. Like she wasn't allowed to wear what she wanted to wear. And I thought it was also interesting how you talked about how the potential for the need to always need to be right. Like if you see she's got that defined will center head and ajna, I could see this part of her that would just feel like she's right all the time, and like, why don't other people see it and why don't they understand it? And she fought that for a while. Like she really fought that until she got to a place where you could see her kind of step outside of it and look at it from an outside perspective and go, these people are never going to let me be right, whether I'm right or not. And so I have to stop attaching my identity to that.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So with your conscious sun in gate 39, gate of provocation, you discover that it does not take much to provoke people. Even though others may be upset, you can see that your provocation is really testing their own self-assurance. Self-assurance and authenticity. At the same time, you will be challenged and provoked in your own life when you are denied or challenged because of the things that you do. It is important to go beyond reacting, whether to someone else or to anything that gets triggered inside you. This is a lifelong learning curve. If you can find a still point within and interact, respond, and answer with clarity from this, you will avoid upsets that take time and effort to undo. Your quest is always to find in others the authentic and empowered qualities that resonate within you. This is not everyone. Trust your type and authority to know who and what to provoke and when and how to hold your peace.
So fascinating.
So fascinating. I was like, oh my word, I can only imagine what life was like. And it's so interesting. We kind of chatted about this before we got on here. To a degree, it was almost like when she had a little bit more freedom, it was like she kind of maybe to some degree got a little bit more recognized, and she was able to do things that she loved. And that's, I think it was like a year before she died, if I saw that correctly, that's where she really championed those 5 charities that she worked for, which I think was like AIDS and the landmines.
The landmines, yes.
And let's see if
I'm trying to remember. It was mostly like there was like the families or the people in like Africa. I think it was like about feeding people or something like that.
Yes. So let's see. So she would work with the homeless, AIDS, leprosy, valet, hospital for children, and a cancer hospital.
Isn't that really interesting that she chose people that she felt like weren't seen, possibly, and she wanted to use her like recognition to help other people be seen? It's like she made that connection to where she could leverage what she had to help those people in the best way possible.
Totally. So I'm curious, does anyone have any questions? Do they want to know anything? Like,
we haven't. There's
explained.
There's no questions yet, but yes, people, please feel free to.
Or we can be done. It's totally fine.
Let me double check and make sure through, because I wonder if it's not showing up here. I just want to double check. Yeah, no comments. Let me double check and make sure. So, is there anything else that's standing out to you in your chart, Holly? Does that gate 42, is that the one that's the gate of receiving?
No, so gate 2.
Oh,
is
Okay,
the
that's right.
receiving one.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right on the opposite end. Okay. So she has that 40 to 37, which is the did we talk about that? That's another emotional wave. We didn't really talk about that, did we?
I don't
Oh
know.
wait, no. That's that 59 to 6. Let's see. 40 to I had it up on my phone. So she has 3 emotional waves technically.
Well, so she only has 2 defined channels.
Mhm.
And then she has the potential for the other ones to be like a temporary helper.
Yeah, and another fascinating thing about her chart is she has that 38, and if she potentially met up with anybody else who had that gate 28, I would be fascinated to do a composite chart with her husband and the other people, because
Yeah.
that could possibly make that struggle more
So
intense.
amplified, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could go on forever
Oh
if we
yeah, I
wanted to
could
like
talk about her
massively
chart
dive
forever.
deep.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the stuff that we
Yeah.
go over as we talk about um, the type and the strategy and the inner authority, and we dive deep and we help you guys understand how your decision-making process works for you. So I'll kind of elaborate a little bit and kind of give why this is important. I liken it to if you were a train and you had your specific track, when we're not listening to our strategy or inner authority, it would like bounce off our track for a little bit. And don't worry, you're never too far gone that you can't get back on really quickly. It's just following that strategy again and letting that strategy tell you what to do and not do. And so if we're off the track, yeah, we can know about our profile. We can know about our centers that are defined and open. We can know, because she's probably taken in a lot of conditioning around her voice and who she is and what she should be doing and how much she should be doing or not doing, and fears. And she can take in conditioning about like all of the energies in the chart that play out. Like she has, wherever you see a gate by itself, and the gate has the potential, like the 57 has potential to be, well, that's a confusing one. We'll do like the 48. So it matches up with the 16 at the throat. So when that happens, you can semi-consistently get that 16 energy, because in the way that the magnetics of this work is, you're going to often attract people who complete these channels for you. So
Yep.
she could think that she's the energy of the 16 and she could think that she needs to be it all the time, when in actuality she's just temporarily amplifying it throughout her life, and the 48 is really who she is. And so we can do some of that deconditioning. We can look at the incarnation cross and think, okay, I want to live out my life. I want to live out my life path. I want to be the best me that I can be. But it's an uphill battle going, like if you imagine a train trying to get up a mountain without being on a track, it's so hard.
Yeah, that's why strategy and authority is so important.
Yeah, that strategy just kind of like bumps you back on that right track. And then everything that you do, all of that momentum and that work that you're going to put forth is just so much more potent.
Yeah.
So
cool. Okay. Well, there's no questions or comments, and I think we don't have anybody left on here anymore. So I think we can end, and that was super fun.
Yeah. So we kind of like doing this. We do this on our own, and we're like, we should just do this in the group. So if you guys are curious about any celebrities' profiles, just comment below and tell us who you'd like to understand better, whatever. And it's even fun to just, who was born on the same day as you. We can dive into celebrities that have that or whatever. So
yeah, super fun. So we want to do this more so that we can kind of give you guys an idea of what this looks like, and you can sort of learn more about human design as we do it. And it's fun. I am always just really fascinated by how other people operate and what makes them the way they are, and how dynamics play out in their relationships. And so this is like the funnest thing ever for me. So
yeah, totally. Well, I don't know, like looking at it, we're having an understanding of this person. We're able to have like compassion, understanding, and go, oh, I can totally see how this is playing out. And I know I think you can say the same, is it's so validating.
Oh, yeah.
It's so incredibly validating to hear that, like, oh, that's why I struggle to be heard. That's why I feel like nobody listens to me.
Yeah,
so
that's why I don't feel seen.
Yeah, and so
or
actually
don't feel
probably
loved.
share this in a projector video next of just kind of like how this all plays out. So
absolutely.
thanks
Awesome.
for joining me.
Okay.
It was fun.
Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.